My Stackaton project is a simple app that determines what gear your car should be in. This is really an excuse for me to spend more time with my husband because I haven't really been able to spend much time with him during this course. So, what you do as a user is you come in here and you, using these sliders, tell the app how much pressure you're applying to the accelerator pedal. You have the option of no pressure, light pressure, or heavy pressure. And you also input your speed. So you, using the slider again, tell the app how fast you want to go. And what the app does on the back end is it determines your RPMs and using based on your accelerator pedal pressure and speed. And using these three factors, the pedal pressure, the speed, and the RPMs, the app will tell you what gear you should be in. A couple things to note. Um, so when there is no pedal pressure, I have disabled the slider. So because think about getting into your car at first, and if you don't have your foot on the accelerator pedal, then you should not be able to go at all. You should stay in 0 miles per hour. But that changes once you start putting any pressure on the pedal. So the other thing to note is that your user cannot set RPMs. I've disabled this slider as well. Because if you think about an actual car, you really don't have much say over the revolutions per minute at which your car is turning. Your car, in a very simplified way, will simply take the pedal pressure and the speed and determine how many RPMs the engine is turning at. So I've disabled that as well. And so we'll see if you're applying light pressure, you'll be able to change gears. So, and every time you change gears, the RPMs goes back down to about 1,000. So it should happen around right there. Because the point in upshifting is to decrease the revolutions per minute at which your engine is spinning to sort of give your engine a break, not to do so much work. And those are different numbers depending on whether you're applying light pressure or heavy pressure. So if you have heavy pressure here, you should be able to stay in first gear for a lot longer. Yep. And then to third gear and back to fourth. So something that was really, really tricky about this app was the RPMs. Because the way the slider works is that it takes the drag as an event. So here, let me just show you this again. If you are, so this is an event right here, drag, setting the pedal pressure. This set RPM only came later, but here, so I'm setting the pedal pressure, and here I'm setting the speed. So I'll be setting speed, setting speed. This RPM, because as I was saying, the user doesn't determine the RPMs, and I've disabled this sliding, I really had to figure out a way to dispatch the change in state because the RPMs were changing based on a calculation under the hood, only the user wasn't dragging. And I really wasn't sure how to do that, but there is this method for smart containers called component will receive props that takes next props as a parameter. So I use that to dispatch any change in RPM to state. So that was my workaround for that. And then once I got these three numbers, so that's how I got the set RPM on here. I just said anytime this component receives props, such as a new accelerator pedal pressure or a new speed, which would then in turn trigger or result in a new number for RPMs, then dispatch this set RPM using next props dot RPM or next props dot speed, next props dot pedal pressure. And that was my workaround for RPMs. And then with these three numbers, the gears would be calculated. And I learned three important lessons throughout the writing of this prop. And the first was to choose your libraries wisely, because there are about 5,000,001 sliders for React available on the internet. And something that I didn't do was vet the libraries properly. I kind of just jumped in blindly with the first slider that I found. And that didn't go very well because it was not a terribly well-maintained slider, and the documentation definitely could have used a little work, and I feel like I wasted a lot of time with the wrong libraries. And then the second lesson was to persevere, because as I was saying, I really struggled with this RPM slider since I didn't have the standard event handler, which is like on slide, on change, available to me. And I really have considered putting a button here, like, find your gear to sort of, to add in an event handler, a traditional event handler. But I thought that's not really how a car works. Your car just automatically tells you what gear you should be in. You don't have to press a button to ask your car to put, the car in the proper gear. So, and I just kept on getting so many error messages. I'm Googling all these error messages, and I finally came across like component will mount or component did mount. And I remembered that these methods were available to us when we studied Redux or React Redux. So persevere. And then the final lesson was try, if possible, not to bite off more than you can chew, because I personally don't know anything about cars. I don't know anything about gears. And I had to get up to speed on that and figure out some very simplified calculations on the back end, in addition to trying to figure out how to manage the intricacies of React Slider. So if possible, try not to bite off more than you can chew. If I were to do this project again, I might have chosen something with which I had a little more familiarity than the gears of a car, because I was just trying to learn all of it at once, and that definitely was a little bit more stressful, I think, than it probably had to be. So that is my app.